Welcome back, everybody, to His Heartbeat. Glad to be back with everybody again. I do have a slight cold, so if you hear coughing, you'll know it's me. Um, but I have a great guest, Heather Wilson. And Heather, I'm laughing because I just listened to my episode this week, which is also on money topics, and her name is Heather. So I
Oh,
think there's something about Heather how draws people to
funny.
help people about money issues. So yeah, Heather's going to join with us and tell us her exciting, I'm going to call it ministry. I believe it is a ministry called Give, Send, Go, which kind of drew my eye because we always say go, send, give. But anyway, it's kind of a phrase. But yeah, so welcome, Heather, to our show.
No, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to chatting with you today.
Good. Well, tell us more just about you personally before we get started.
Sure. So I am uh, one of 12 siblings. So I grew up in a
Oh,
really large family. So the crowd, I own a crowdfunding platform. So it's funny because we joke that my whole life has been crowd
well.
something, we grew up in southern New Hampshire, same mom and dad, no twins, not Catholic. Those are
Wow.
all the questions people ask. Uh, I am the second oldest, six boys and six girls, and about 10 years ago, started a company with two of my siblings. And we had seen sites like GoFundMe starting to pop up. Social media was becoming a big thing. And we saw this way of fundraising that people were able to help each other easily and effectively with just a little bit of money. Because if everybody gave $5 or $10, you could see big needs being met. And we thought, what a cool idea. That actually reminds us of that church in Acts, where it says, when there was a need, people came together and people were without need because the church came together. And so we thought, what if we were to start a crowdfunding platform, this fundraising platform, similar to GoFundMe, but with kind of an ulterior motive, like to share hope with people? Because often when people need a fundraise, it's because they're going through something hard. And so GiveSendGo was born. Again, we're on our 10-year anniversary, and we're now the second largest crowdfunding platform
Wow.
available in over 80 countries. So it's been an amazing adventure when you say yes to Jesus, going from a stay-at-home mom with no college education to running a multi-million international company. It's been amazing.
Wow. So what part do you have and what part do your two siblings have?
Sure. So my brother and I actually co-CEO it right now. So we work together. One of my sisters, she kind of stepped out early on. Just God led her in a different direction, but a lot of the idea was just her spearheading it to begin with. So I believe that's why how God had this all start. But so my brother and I now co-CEO it. I tend to lean on the marketing and the people side of things, and he's on like the legal and finance side of things. So
Mm.
together we actually work really well as we try to grow Give Send Go and let people know that we're here for people to fundraise on.
So tell us, for those who don't know, that was me. I asked you a few minutes before what crowdfunding means.
Sure. So it really, it's a fancy new term for fundraising. It's getting a of people together to fundraise. So crowdfunding, and it's been specifically labeled to like online platforms such as GiveSendGo or like a GoFundMe or sites like that, where a crowd of people come together and they fund something that they want to do. It really is the same as a spaghetti dinner. You want a crowd of people to come and buy your spaghetti so you can make some funding. And so it's just more of a technical term, a new term for this phenomenon that we see online, where people can share easily and get in front of thousands of people that they might not have been able to get in front of prior to the internet.
Okay. So it is faith-based. So how does that fit into it all?
Sure. So saying it's faith-based means that me and my brother, my sister, we started this with the idea that we wanted to share hope with people. And so not just raise money for material needs and the things that we need in life that cost money, but also say, listen, when you're going through cancer and need to raise money for treatment, there's more than material needs. And there's a hope that God can only fill in us during those hard times. And so we started Give, Send, Go with that being our mission. Our mission statement is to share the hope of Jesus through crowdfunding. And um, but we're not just for Christians to use. We see all sorts of people around the world using us for all sorts of things because we took an early stance on saying we're not going to get into this censorship game that a lot of these big tech platforms do. If they disagree, they shut you down. So we allow people to raise funds for what's important to them. And then we reach out. We have a hope team that calls every campaign and says, can I pray with you over what you're raising funds for? And
Well,
so we really say, you can come to our platform. We might not even agree with you, but we still know that you need Jesus.
oh, that's cool. So that's where you have your point of contact of sharing faith in that follow-up phone call, huh?
Yeah, that's one of our main points of contact. You know, our emails all have Bible verses, and our we have a prayer. You know, there's a button for giving to the campaign and sharing, but we also have a praying a button, so you can pray for a campaign. Maybe you don't have the money, but you want to let someone know you're praying for them. We've built hope into our whole platform because it really is the mission behind why we do what we do. And we have some incredible stories of people from atheists that said, I can't believe you called me and cared enough. I don't even believe there's a God. And you called and asked me how my campaign was going, and I can't stop crying that someone cared enough about me. To the
Oh,
woman who had just we get on the phone with her, and she had a traumatic campaign. Her daughter had committed suicide a few weeks earlier and left behind a baby.
oh,
Just
wow.
really sad. And when our Hope team called, the lady said I had just pulled out my gun and I was going to end my life. And God
Oh
had
my
us
gosh.
call her in that moment to
Wow.
like speak life and hope into her. And we said, this is why we do what we do. It's great to let people raise money easily online, but sharing hope with people is what people really need.
So is that a volunteer team that calls or because
No, we hire people. There are people who we pay to pray, and that is their job. Um, and you know, they don't like being said they pay to pray. They say we pray for free. It's all the paperwork you make us do that you're paying us for. But because they have to like, but you know, check off some boxes and things. But yeah, no, this is a team on Give, Send, Go that is a hired team that get to call campaigns and just share Jesus with them.
that's cool. So how many phone calls are being made a week? Like how many people are
Yeah, there
working
are
for you?
hundreds and hundreds of phone calls being made any given week. Campaigns come in, they get a recipient added to them, and once we know who's going to be receiving the money and the verification and all that, we give a call and say, "Hey, we've read through your campaign." And so they are constantly just calling, and the list keeps getting longer. And so I remember early on, our Hope Team lead said, "What if we ever get through them all?" And and I said, well, I don't think you ever will because our goal, our marketing team's goal is to have new campaigns coming in so fast, we're going to have to hire more of you because we can't keep up. And that really is what we want to see happen is that we keep growing the way God has us growing. And that just opens up so many more opportunities to
That's
pray for
cool.
people around the world.
That's awesome. So do you guys keep a certain percentage so that you can do what you're doing?
Yeah, you know, we actually are a free platform. So when we first started crowdfunding, the traditional model of crowdfunding was there's a payment processor that if you process online, if you use PayPal or any sort of processor online, it's usually about 3%, maybe like 2.9 and 30 cents or just around hovering around that amount. So that goes to the payment processor, not the platform. And then there would be a platform fee. So like the platform, the Give, Send, Go would charge to use our platform so we can make money to keep the lights on. Early on, we were like that for a couple months. We had a slightly lower fee than our competition, and we were like, okay, that's how we're going to market this. And as we started those first few months, we really started to feel like God was asking us to become a free model. And what that meant is we were going to remove our the money that we took, the 5%, 4% that we would take out of each donation, and we were going to allow the givers, if they wanted to give an additional donation to GiveSendGo to help keep us free. Now it's not mandatory. So if I were to come to your campaign, I'd give $100, let's say, to whatever you're raising funds for, and then there'd be a section that says, "Do you want to help keep GiveSendGo free?" People can choose to give; they don't have to. And what we have found, first, the campaign owner gets to keep more of the money because we're not taking it from them. The giver is the one with the money. So if they have a little extra, they tend to be happy we're not taking it from the campaign owner. And we're making more money than we did when we were charging
Can
for
you?
our platform.
Oh, that's cool. So, what got you interested, or kind of what's the backstory in your life that, brought you to this place?
It's really interesting when you look back over life. As you're going through things, you don't necessarily know where, what part of the story you're at. I was talking to someone the other day and they were going through a hard thing. And I said, "Yeah, but you're just in the middle. Like, you're not at the end yet." So, like, the middle can be hard. And so as I look back in my life, I look at all the beginning and middles and some of the ends that I know how it wrapped up and some that are still going on today. And I just love, I grew up in like I said, a very large family, but with a mom and dad who just loved Jesus, who taught us to work hard and but that it's not all dependent on us, that God is our provider and that he's faithful. And I saw that firsthand in my parents' lives come through and miracles and just some really cool stories. And so I'm so thankful for that grounding growing up. And then I get married and I have kids and here's a fun story. I'm about 40 years old. I have four kids, almost 20 something year old and two in high school and one that's just in middle school. He's just turning 10 or right before middle school. And I find out I'm pregnant and I'm like, oh, like life was just getting easier. Like I don't want to do this again.
Yeah.
And so sure enough, we have a baby and I have this 10-year gap. And so we decide, you know what? We've talked about foster care and adoption. I wonder if maybe we should do that. We have this 10-year gap. We're going to be raising kids now for the rest of our lives anyways, as so it feels. Let's go through the foster care program. And so when you see things like that, when you look back, you're like, look how God just arranged this whole thing. What happens is that we end up going through the home study process and the classes and all the things that are entailed. Our son's now turning 12, our baby's now 2, and we finish and now we're waiting to get a child, like hear that there's a child that needs to come into our home and you're excited and you can't wait and you're imagining what it's going to be like and then nothing. And
Uh,
then weeks go by and nothing and nothing. And it was like, okay, God, maybe this isn't what you have for us, right? Well, about a year to the day that we went through started our foster care classes, my mother myself, my mother-in-law, and a friend were on a cruise. We gave it to each other for Christmas that year, like a long weekend cruise. And
uh-huh.
so while I'm in on the cruise, my phone connects to the internet at one of the ports and it starts to like ding a lot. Ding, 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 ding. And I'm like trying to catch up with all the stuff I've missed. And there's a phone call and it says, "Congratulations, you've been approved as a foster parent. And we have 5 siblings we need to emergency remove from your home. Can you take them?
Can you
And
take 5?
can you take 5?" And I
Who
was like,
does that? Did you
so I call
say
my
you would do
husband.
something like that?
I call my husband and I'm like, "I'm not going to be home for 2 days. I know nothing and I'm going to lose my service any minute now. Like we're pulling away from the port. I'm going to lose service. Let me know what you decide. I'm going to forward you the voicemail." So 2 days later, I come home and I get out of my car and my front door opens and these 5 little kids,
No.
ages 10, 9, 8, 6, and 5 come out and they go, I get out of my car and I go, "What are you all doing here?" And then one of them looks at me and he goes, "Are you that dude's girlfriend?" Because they'd been home with my husband for a couple days.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was supposed to be a 15-day placement. It turned into almost 2 years. I actually just, and one of the reasons I'm telling you this, I just finished my book and it came this week and it's called Are You That Dude's Girlfriend? Learning to Love Like Jesus. Because
Wow,
I would
that's
have
great.
told you I loved like Jesus. I would have told you that, I served in children's ministry. I grew up in church. I loved people. I'm a people person. And then you get put in a place where your whole life is just sacrifice. And you're going, wait a minute. I don't want to do this anymore. Like this is hard. Like
Wow.
I don't want to do this. Yeah, I want to be Jesus's hands and feet. And then someone said, yeah, but you know what happened to his hands and feet? They were nailed to a cross. And I was like, oh, okay. That's not what I was thinking. I was thinking, healing people and being, using my hands and
Yeah.
feet that way. No, it costs sacrifice. And so I went through the next 2 years of having these five children in my house, learning to really what it meant to love like Jesus. And I look back and I go, God, you were setting me up for Give, Send, Go, for some of the trials that we would have in Give, Send, Go of people that don't like our stance on freedom and me having to choose to love people anyways when people are being mean or things like that. He put me in a position to say, listen, when life's hard, when it doesn't feel like it's worth it, when you're not getting the accolades and no one sees your sacrifice, that's what it means to love like Jesus. And so when I look back over my life, I see that story and I go, wow, God, you knew what you were doing and continuing to mold my life so that I could be in a place to serve you better and better. And now I look at everything we go through with Gifts and Go and in my own personal life and my family, and I go, keep teaching me to love like you, Jesus.
So what happened with the five kids?
So we actually adopted one of them, and they all needed to be split because of they just had a lot of psychological. There was a really bad trauma situation for them. Mom had locked them in closets and tased them and fed them dog
Oh,
poop. Like it was bad, and they were all really behind in school and had learning disabilities. Like just rough stuff. And so it was decided that they needed to be separated so that each one would get a family that could like concentrate on them and get them to where they needed to be emotionally, physically, psychologically. And so the two, we have one of them and we adopted him. And then two of the brothers live nearby, so we get to see them. And then the two little sisters who are now growing up, they're all growing up, are about 2 hours away, and each one are in a great, loving family. Um,
no good.
Doing well. And, my prayer is that their time with us and our family, that they got to experience a little of Jesus's love, even through the failures and the hard days, that they got to experience Jesus. And so,
That's
yeah.
cool. So you said one of your uh, key points is about freedom.
Mhm.
Can you explain that?
Sure. So we live in a world that with social media, we've seen it happen even more so that as long as we used to be able to have conversation with each other and disagree, like around the dinner table, maybe with our neighbors or friends or family. And now with social media, people can get behind a keyboard and write whatever they want and never have to confront the what their words say. And so we see these platforms that just shut people down when they disagree with them. They go, "Oh, wait, you're pro-life? We're going to shut you down. We're not going to let you raise funds on our platform." Where, "Oh, you whatever, all different things." And so early on, we decided, okay, we're going to stand for freedom for people to have a voice to fundraise, maybe even if we disagree with them. And we found ourselves in a couple stories along the way, just with the unrest over the last few years in just society. A few years ago, there was a young guy named Kyle Rittenhouse who had been in there was a bunch of riots going down the street right after George Floyd, and he found himself in a bad place and he needed legal defense. And he came to Give, Send, Go after everybody else had shut him down and said, "We're not going to allow you a legal defense fund." And me and my brother were like, "Should we allow him a legal defense? Like, that's not, we're like a Christian platform. We don't want to drag God's name through the mud? Like, is this where we're supposed to go? And we spent some time in prayer and fasting and seeking counsel with some people that we trusted. And we really came out of that season going, no, we are going to allow that. In the United States, you get to have a jury of your peers and trial and the justice system. I don't want to be judged by a clip on Facebook. And so we started there. We got a lot of hate and pushback. You know, when we allowed this kid Kyle to fundraise when everybody else shut him down, um, I got death threats. I had to change my phone number. That's like how angry people got. And this was just to allow somebody, not that we thought he was innocent or guilty. We weren't there. I don't know. But that we would allow him to raise money to get a good legal defense. And to me, I'm like, let him have a good legal defense. And if he's guilty, then let him get the consequences of his actions. I'm not opposed to consequence. So this was like a troublesome time of standing there while people threw stones and told us we were doing it wrong. This is where I say, you know, learning to love like Jesus, the people that might not like you in the moment.
Mm.
And we said, no, we're going to stand for people's freedom. He actually went to trial, and when all the evidence came out, he got found not guilty. And
Oh,
so, some people were like, "We're glad you stood with Kyle." And we said we actually didn't stand with Kyle. We didn't know if he was innocent or guilty. We stood behind the premise of the presumption of innocence that he gets afforded to him in the United States. And we feel like that's
yeah.
really important. And so, being a Christian platform whose mission is to share the hope of Jesus, to wrestle with some of these like
Mm.
weird political societal things has been hard. It's been an interesting journey of leaning into God and asking Him for His wisdom.
Yeah, that's a challenge.
It is a challenge. It's a big challenge.
Wow. Okay. Well, good for you. Yeah. Well, is there any, tell us the name of your book again and
Sure.
a
So
little
my
bit more about it.
Yeah, so my book is called "Are You That Dude's Girlfriend?" The first thing the kids said to me when they saw me, and the
Great.
subtitle is "Learning to Love Like Jesus." Again, my name's Heather Wilson. You can find it on Amazon, and it's a devotional. It's about a 7 chapter. It's an easy read. I just tell stories of the funny, hard, uh, good and bad times during that season of life, pressing people to love more like Jesus, and I examine themselves for the things, the ways that they need um, to press in to who, you know, often in our culture and in our world, we live in this like boundary, you know, put up boundaries, like, and I agree there are times you put boundaries up. I'm not like, but I think that often as Christians we're like, oh, hard person boundary, and God's like, no, like I want you to actually love people. Like I want you to actually embrace the hard sometimes. And I
Yeah.
want you now, don't put yourself in a place where you're just always, you know, like there are boundaries. I'm not even, but I do believe that we are called to love like Jesus, and that is removing some of those boundaries between the hard people in us and actually embracing that and saying, God, let them see who you are through my reaction to them, even in in the hardness.
Yeah, I just started reading, well, I'm almost done reading a book about Mother Teresa my daughter gave me for my birthday. And I'm just blown away at this woman. And she's kind of like you in the philosophy that she didn't say, oh, well, they're Hindu and we're a Catholic, you
Yep.
know, church or whatever, or they're Muslim. She just loved everybody and she treated them equally. And very sacrificially. I mean, it's a miracle
Amazing.
that she didn't die. I mean, she's this teeny little woman and she was helping lepers and you name it, TB, everything. She said out of all they have at least at the point I've read 200 women, only two got sick ever from, even though they lay hands on them and
Yeah,
they
take
help
care of them. Yeah.
as people were dying, they'd just be with them holding their hand, to the end. And yeah, she didn't have any boundaries. I mean, she kind of
Yeah.
really didn't,
I know.
even as
You know,
far.
I'm homeschooling my adopted son, and he one of his summer reading is The Hiding Place, which I
Yeah.
had read years ago, haven't read in a long time, back when I was a teenager, I think is the last time I've read it.
Yeah.
And so I'm having him read it. And so I was like, I'm going to read it with you because I want to, it's just been a long time. And again, just reading that book and, we know the story. They hid people, they get sent to
Yeah.
concentration camps. And the amount of love, especially Betsy, her sister, had toward the people who were like the most brutal to them. And I'm like, I have a hard time with someone being mean to me on Facebook to
Yeah.
respond loving. And here's
Yeah.
someone who's like not feeding them or not
Yeah.
taking care of them. And one of the last things in the book is her speaking, Corey Ten Boom speaking at a church, and the soldier, one of the soldiers that she recognized, comes up to her after she is speaking, and he puts his hand out to her and he says, "Oh, what a great sermon," or "Thank you for speaking. Isn't it so great that God's grace forgives even me?" And I'm like, that it makes me sick to my stomach. Like, and she had those thoughts going like, you stood there. Like, well, I
Yeah.
was beaten and ridiculed and you let that happen. And I'm supposed to sit here and be so thankful that God forgives you. And she's
Yeah.
like, I sat there and I felt like, God, I can't forgive him. You forgive him because I can't. And
Yeah.
he just kept his hand out. And she's like, I didn't even want to lift my hand up. And she's like, but I finally just stuck my hand out. And she's like, and in that moment, the love of God came over me, through me. I felt it into him. And she's like, and I realized that I love this line. I realized that God wouldn't call us to love anybody that he wouldn't provide the love for. And she's like,
Mm.
he provided that love. She didn't have to muster it up and try.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
God
Yeah.
said, I want you to love him. I'll provide you with that love. And I'm like, man, God, I want you to provide me with that love.
Yeah. I've had um that experience of God's love pouring through me when I knew it wasn't me. I had that in Armenia once, this poor woman whose son had been killed in the war, and her friends brought her to our conference, and she hadn't smiled in 25 years.
Wow.
And she just, the whole first day, she just had this long face, like nothing could penetrate, no matter what we were saying. But we get into small groups at our conferences, and I was leading her group. And I said, let me just pray over you. And as I did, I kind of was standing over her, I couldn't fit in the group there,
Yeah.
and I'm praying in your ear, and they're translating. And I just suddenly just felt this wave of God's love. And then I just started crying. And I knew it wasn't me. I didn't know her. I didn't know her from Adam,
Or
I
yeah,
knew it wasn't
exactly.
me. And I told her, Jesus is weeping for your pain. He's grieving with you. And she's crying. And then the next day, um, actually turns out she didn't really know the Lord. So I got to share that as well. And she prayed. And the next day she comes in beaming, smiling from ear to ear. And I was like, wow, Lord, that's just awesome.
That is
How
awesome.
He
That
could
is
touch
awesome
us in that way.
that he wants to use us for
Yeah.
those things. It is. It's just amazing.
And I think what you're doing is a testimony to whatever we do, right? In Colossians
Yeah.
3:24, whatever we do in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. That you don't, it's not just a missionary or a pastor. All of us are holy priests of God. All of us are ambassadors.
Yeah.
All of us have that calling to of reconciliation, of bringing people to the Father's love.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
and
what you're doing.
yeah, it says whatever we do, do it as we if we were doing it unto the Lord.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, that person might not be worthy in our eyes, but if we're doing it unto the Lord, it changes everything. Right?
yeah,
Who are we doing it for?
because everybody in his eyes is worthy.
It is
When you're
worthy.
sharing that one example, I just thought about Paul and how he stood there as
Yep.
Stephen was being
Used
stoned, and then
by kissing.
he ends up being the most influential missionary ever. You
And
know,
God changes lives. And this is what we say. It's like, listen, I get it. that might be a bad guy that you see on our platform that you don't like, but God loves him. Like, would you not let him into your church? Would you not let, if he came seeking,
Yeah.
we're getting an opportunity to speak into people's lives that we might not ever have a chance to again,
Well,
and that might never go to a church.
you have challenges. So there's no one that you've turned down at this point. Is that
Well,
right?
there, you can't, yeah, you can't be raising money for something illegal. So
Okay.
so there are laws in place that
Okay.
guidelines of what you can raise money for or what you can, who you are. If
No.
you, can you bank in the United States? If you can't bank because you're a terrorist or you're whatever, then you're not going to be able to use GiveSendGo. We also don't allow someone to raise money. This is a caveat. We don't let somebody raise money for an abortion on GiveSendGo because we don't allow murder.
Okay.
And so, you know what? We don't allow you to, you're not allowed to kill people just because our world has said killing babies is fine as long as they're not born yet.
Yeah.
Um, we say, no, that's still murder. You're killing a life. And so
Yeah.
it should be illegal because you're killing somebody. So just because our world tried to make it that it's a little messed up. So that's one thing. We don't see people trying to come on and raise money, but we very firmly stand for life. The hard ones are these legal defense where someone did something wrong and they need to raise money for a legal fee, and you go, ugh, they did something wrong. I know they did something wrong. Should
Yeah.
they be allowed to raise money for their legal fees? And this is the part, again, where God can lead you into places that are uncomfortable and
Mhm.
that you go, ugh. And for a period of time, my he's 19 now, my son, who was 10 when I got pregnant, he went through the middle school years and into high school, and he became really hard for me. He just started to like rebel. He just whoever he would hang out with the worst kids. We would ground him. Like I could see him going down this path that I thought this isn't gonna go well for him. And we just butted heads. Like it was not good. And I didn't know what to do. And one night at youth group, I got a call from the youth leader. Oh, he had taken off with some kids, some new kids at youth group, obviously the bad kids, because that's who he wanted to be cool, right? And so I had to go pick him up. On my way, we live about 40 minutes from church. So on my way to go get him, I was just thinking about that morning in my Bible reading, I was reading James, and it says, if any of you lack wisdom, ask, and I will generously give you wisdom. And
Yeah.
so I go and I pick up my son, and I'm like, what the heck? Like, why would you leave youth group? The youth leader told you not to, and this kid's a bad kid, and blah, blah, blah. And I started like my little mom lecturing that had become very normal in our life. Like, it was just this constant
Yeah.
irritation in life. And I got real quiet. I just got quiet and I was like, you know what? It doesn't. And he's sitting there, his arms are crossed, no music on. We have a 40-minute ride home and I'm quiet now. I start in and then I just get quiet. And I'm like, I start talking to God instead. And I'm just like, in my mind, I'm like, God, you promise wisdom. I don't know a thing. I don't know what to do with this kid. I've tried everything. I don't know. He's yours. I don't even want him anymore. Like half the time I don't like him, right? Like I just don't know what to do. It and you promised wisdom. So are you going to give me wisdom? Come on. You promised. Like if maybe it's not true. Maybe all of this whole Christianity thing's not true because either
Uh-oh.
it's all true or all not true, right? Like if you promise wisdom, you're either going to give wisdom or you're not and you're a liar. And so come on God, I read that this morning that you give wisdom and I don't know what to do with the kid. We drive home and I'm just like having those hard conversations with God, which I love that he desires that wrestle with us for us to be real. And so we pull into my driveway. My son gets out of the car, slams the door, right? Goes marching and all mad. I'm like, and I sit in the car and I'm just get quiet. And I'm like, God, I don't know. You promised wisdom and I just don't know what to do. And I sit there and I hear the Lord in the way he can speak to you, not an audible voice or whatever, but he said, I did give you wisdom. I told you to shut up and ask for wisdom. And I was like, oh. Yeah, you know what? That was the wise thing in the moment. Not to just keep like be quiet, ask me for wisdom. That will be the wisest thing you can do in this moment. And then I went inside, went to bed that night, talked to my husband, and we were able to deal with it the next day when the emotions weren't high, and we were able to deal with it. And I can tell you it took a couple years, but God got a hold of my son's heart, and he is a missionary now, traveling around telling people about how amazing God is in his life and the
Wow.
transformation.
Praise the
And
Lord.
so when we talk about these hard situations with Give Send Go or foster kids or whatever, I'm like, hey, I know the God and he promises me wisdom. And so I'm just going to walk it out. I'm going to be put in hard places and have no idea what I'm supposed to do. But guess what? God's going to give me wisdom because he promises and he's come through again and again and again and again. And I'm like, I wish I knew that and clung to that in my younger years of early marriage and all of that. Like I knew it, but I never asked for it. And the Bible
Yeah.
says you don't have it because you don't ask, right? So anybody who's listening to this, God wants you to ask for wisdom. Like he promises, just ask and he will come through because he's faithful.
Awesome. Give us a subtitle on your book. I might title this episode that.
Learning to love like Jesus. Uh,
Yeah, I like that.
learning to love like Jesus, because that is, I remember someone saying about Jesus, I always said, I want to be God's hands and feet, Jesus's hands and feet. And someone said, yeah, you know, those were nailed to a cross. And I was like, it like took me back because I was like,
Yeah, I know.
oh, I never, like, I know that, but
I've never thought of it that way either.
yeah. And I was like, okay, so do I really want to be his hands and feet? Like,
That's
giving. Like I
interesting.
literally always thought it was like sandaled feet walking around
Yeah,
and hands leaning my hand on people, like seeing
yeah,
healings happen. And I was
yeah,
like, no, the love like Jesus is that sacrifice, saying, you can hate me and I'm still gonna love you. Not an easy thing to do in today's culture, but it's what we're called to do. Love like Jesus.
yeah. Well, that's great. Really appreciate this. So if they want to connect with Give, Send, Go, do they just Google it and it'll pop up?
Sure. Go to Give, Send, Go. It's three words. Give, Send, Go. GiveSendGo.com. You can go on. You can see all the campaigns on there. You can go to our prayer wall if you have a prayer request and you want people to pray. There are people who just go through our prayer wall and pray for people. Or if you're looking for things to pray for, go to our prayer wall and pray for people. You can look through campaigns. You can start a campaign. Maybe somebody in your neighborhood, maybe someone in your family or in your church is going through a rough time. Step in, be those hands and feet. Like say, I'm going to do something. I'm not going to wait for someone else to do something. I'm going to step in and get my friends to come around side and we'll all give a little and help this person out. So givesendgo.com.
All right. I love it. Hey, well, thanks so much, Heather. This was not only informative, but inspiring and challenging and all those good things. Really
Well,
appreciate it.
thank you for having me on.
All right. Y'all pass this on, please, because it's a really good resource to have. A lot of, at some point in our lives, I think during COVID, you must have been really busy, but anyway,
Yeah.
um, yeah, we have these moments, and so it's really good to know that you guys are out there. Thank you so much. All
You're
right,
welcome.
have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you again, or yeah, or you'll hear us again next week. All right.